Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. The tortuous and lengthy process of promulgation of a new constitution for Nepal is a few days from culmination as its Constituent Assembly is going through clause by clause voting. One of the clauses, Article 4, which proclaimed that Nepal will be a secular state, was opposed, and a proposal to change it to Hindu state was proposed by Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, a pro-Hindu group. However, the Constituent Assembly rejected the proposal by an overwhelming margin, with only 21 of the 601-seat assembly supporting it. Nepal had been known as the only Hindu nation in the world till 2006, when monarchy was overthrown. While this voting out the proposal to make Nepal a Hindu nation is a significant development, the process of constitution making itself is also going through a painful process, as the Madhesi parties have boycotted the voting and violent protests are going on, with already 40 people killed in the violence. We will discuss all this today with Shankar Mukherjee, former Indian ambassador to Nepal, DP Tripathi, NCP MP in the Rajya Sabha, Monu Nalapat, political analyst, Prashant, associate editor, Hindustan Times, and on the phone line from Kathmandu is Yubaraj Ghimire, editor, Annapurna Post. Welcome to all of you. Yubaraj, coming to you first, what is the situation there? And as far as this voting on this proposal to make it a Hindu nation is concerned, what has been the reaction of the people in Nepal?
Well, it was, it was already decided by the House of Representatives in May 2006. And there were, disorganized or unorganized protests against it, and the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, the only political party that took it up. It was already there. So what has happened in Parliament is just a formality, but the protest is over processlessness of, in deciding a very crucial and important issue. Like what had happened in 2006 May was, although it was not the demand or agenda of the movement that demanded that the king hand over power to the political parties. That was a movement against the takeover by the king, and whether Nepal should be a secular or continue to remain a Hindu country was not the agenda, but the way it happened, because the Speaker of the House suddenly announced, and some members say that in the agenda that was circulated among the members in the House, this issue was not there. So out of 26 declarations made by the chair, the 26th point was Nepal henceforth would be a secular country. Right. This is an issue which merited much larger debate and participation and involvement of the people. So more than on the content and merit of the issue, it was the way it was decided. And the Constituent Assembly now, when it takes up these issues, one member has been alerted not more than 5 minutes, no serious debate, no due process followed. That's what is being objected about more than, the decision that the House has taken now.
Okay, stay on. Yubaraj, I'll come back to you. Tripathi, Mr. Tripathi, what do you think of this? This is something which was, as Yubaraj says, was just a formality, or you think it has larger implications?
I don't think now it has larger implications because the decision has been already taken. What Yubaraj is saying, I agree with him, that this voting was just formality. And only one political party, that is Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, is taking that issue. And certain small groups are, organizing some protests, which are
there
not...
were protests tested.
Which protests are not very powerful protests or not substantial. Therefore, this is not the issue. The issues are actually different in Nepal today. Hindu state or secular state is not the issue at the moment.
Okay. Mr. Nalapat, would you agree with that it's not an issue anymore?
I would say that it is an emotional issue. Now, we have seen what happened in India, for example, and my belief is that this is just the beginning of a process. Now,
what do you mean, what has happened in India, for example?
For example, you see that the question is one of the definition of secularism. If secularism means equal treatment to all faiths, there's no problem at all. It's an absolutely admirable system. But if secularism means special privileges to some faiths and which are denied to other faiths, then we have a problem. And we are seeing that in operation in India, where quite frankly, the question of secularism, of equal treatment to all faiths, is, in the view of many, not being applied. So if that happens in Nepal, and if the Indian definition of secularism is adopted in Nepal, I see this whole issue actually spreading to other areas of Nepal.
And this is not something which is going to stop here. Mr. Mukherjee, how would you look at it? You were there when all these things happened, and in these last 7-8 years that you've been watching?
I was there when this question of the Nepal declared itself a secular state. Earlier, the constitution described Nepal as a Hindu Rashtra, Hindu state, but it was not ever declared a state. Hinduism was never declared a state religion in a legal sense, but that's just part of the background. I should defer to Yubaraj because he's on the spot and he has been, he's one of the main analysts of Nepali politics for a long, long time. But I do not agree with him that this business about making Nepal a secular state rather than a Hindu Rashtra was slipped in a sort of a, heavy manner and slipped into the constitution without the Constituent Assembly or those, people responsible for the interim constitution not really being given a chance to comment about it, with the implication that many of them may have done so. I do not think so at all. I distinctly remember after the announcement was made, Nepal just shrugged its shoulders and carried on. There were no huge demonstrations and so on and so forth. Even after yesterday's vote, which was categorically and overwhelmingly rejected, 601 to 21, I mean, how much more overwhelming can you get? And if we are to give credence to what Yubaraj said about, giving very little time for people to talk and so on and so forth, the fact is 601 members represent every section of society. Surely one can assume that even if they don't represent 100% of the opinion of Nepal, they do represent the overwhelming majority of the people of Nepal. Nepal remains a very deeply religious Hindu country, but Nepal remains a country which is perfectly happy by treating all religions equally. For instance, there has never been, there have been, even in the king's time, you see, the other thing is that the one reason for the fact that the rejection of describing in the constitution Nepal as a Hindu Rashtra and the acceptance of the word secular in the constitution was that the Nepali people had fought against monarchy. They had got rid of the monarchy, and the monarchy was inextricably linked in a kind of a mystique with the Hindu religion, 23rd reincarnation of Vishnu and so on. So one was linked with the other. I think yesterday's vote, was progressive, modern, reflected the reality of Nepali society, which is there are tribes like the Tamang and the Limbus and so on who happily observe Buddhist and Hindu rituals. And secondly, I think even after yesterday's vote, the demonstrations that talk about, I'm afraid, the media has a lot to blame, because when a demonstration takes place, you say, thousands demonstrated against blah, blah, blah. Not what you don't mention. The media never mentioned the millions that haven't demonstrated because they are the silent majority.
Okay, that's interesting. Yubaraj, would you like to react to it?
Yeah.
Before I go to Prashant?
No, Mr. Mukherjee was here.
I just want to say one thing. No. Yubaraj will react, so I just want to add.
Yubaraj, I think
just briefly.
Mr. Tripathi also wants to say.
My point is, when Yubaraj says there was no debate, that is not correct. Because for months, even now, this debate has been going on, especially after the formation of the new government in India. I will give only one instance. When our External Affairs Minister, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, went to Nepal before the PM's visit, she was pointedly asked a question, are you going to ensure that there should be Hindu Rashtra in Nepal? She said, no. I have taken oath under a secular constitution, and it is for the Nepalese to decide. Their constitution is secular, and I think it will continue to be secular.
Okay, that's
this debate has been going on.
No, that is interesting. Yes, Yubaraj.
Yeah, no, the two things. I think Professor Mr. Tripathi, slightly distorted the event. It was, I think, a program organized by people who were affiliated with the RSS. There they said that it's, why did you make India also a Hindu country? Then they said, I have taken oath under the constitution, which is secular, so I don't want to go in it and say anything against it. That was in a closed-door meeting where I was not present, but I know what had happened. Second, May 18 declaration, Ambassador Mukherjee said, even his friend Shekhar Koirala, he was the one to reveal much later that it was not in the agenda. When the agenda circulated, it was not there. But what I'm saying is secularism is a much larger and positive concept as religion is. So look at the change. When Nepal was declared secular, but its ruler, its prime minister was also officiating head of the state, G.P. Koirala, who is never known to have gone to any temple or observed Hindu rituals, started going to the temple representing the state, which was basically antithesis of, what the secular concept of a state is. So these contradictions could have been best managed if you had a proper debate in the House. There was absolutely no debate. We were present there, and there was no debate on this issue, whether Nepal should go secular, should remain Hindu, should become anti-religion, whatever. It merited much larger debate, which never happened. That's what I'm saying, with all the authority of a journalist who was present there and who has been observing things from the spot.
Okay. Prashant, what kind of secularism? The question raised by Monu Nalapat is a very important question, which we continue to debate in this country. So what kind of secularism is Nepal going to adopt?
I think that's a good question, but the background to that, which we must keep in mind, is that Nepal is a country of minorities. What we often forget in this narrative that has been built up about Nepal being a Hindu majority country is that there are many ethnic groups in Nepal who don't necessarily identify themselves as Hindus, right? And when the kingdom was a Hindu kingdom, and remember, Nepal was only declared a Hindu kingdom in 1962 to justify an autocratic monarchical rule, and it was not Hindu before that. When this happened, and there was definitely alienation among ethnic minorities who led this movement for secularism in the country. I think that secularism would mean equal respect and equal distance from all faiths, as Mr. Nalapat said. And I think that secularism in Nepal is a laudable thing, but it doesn't go far enough, because even in the definition of secularism that has been passed, it says protection of Sanatan Dharma, protection of ancient religion, which I think still reveals a Hindu tilt to the Nepali state, which it should not have. The president should not be going to religious functions. What if we have a Muslim president tomorrow? And that, as an equal Nepali citizen, Muslims constitute 4% of the population. Tomorrow, Nepal may have a Muslim president. Does the president also go to a Hindu religious function? I think the state has to stay away from religion. Secularism is a good first step, and we need to go further. Nepal has to go further in institutionalizing what this secularism means.
That's interesting. Mr. Nalapat, how do you react to that?
Well, I simply want to point out that, if you go to the UK or the US, for example, no one claims that they're not democracies. The fact is that Barack Obama, for example, waves the Bible around everywhere, and I think that's perfectly understood there.
He takes the oath on the Bible.
He takes the oath on the Bible, and so David Cameron very proudly says, I'm a Christian. There are several places like Denmark, which is not known to be very medieval, has got certain privileges for the church which don't have any other state. Now, going to a temple, I don't think is a sign that a person is against any other faith. And I simply want to say Sanatan Dharma, if you really define Sanatan Dharma, it's perfectly compatible with all the faiths, because it really means that any faith which believes in an almighty power, when all these faiths will lead to the same almighty power. So there's nothing to prevent a Muslim head of the government from going to a mosque. And I don't think that will really be that much of a, deviation from the true spirit of Sanatan Dharma. So the only point I'd like to make is, there is a kind of a confusion in Nepal that this demand for making it back a Hindu state is actually a clandestine demand for return of the monarchy. And since May 26, 2014, also a clandestine way of strengthening the kind of links with India. Now, if there is a perception that the monarchy is gone for good, and I firmly believe the monarchy is gone for good, it can never come back, then that is why I'm saying this is a demand which actually can spread across Nepal and can have a momentum of its own in the coming years.
Can I come back on that? Because, I do think that that I don't have any problems with the president of Nepal in his individual capacity going to a temple or going to an institution of religious worship. I think it's a problem if the president of Nepal goes in his capacity and in his ex officio capacity to a particular religious institution. And that is what is happening, that because
Okay.
he's the head of the state, he goes, right? I think
Okay.
that's the distinction.
Okay, Mr. Tripathi, how do you react to this? This is a very interesting debate. I don't know whether this debate has happened in Nepal. Apparently, according to Yubaraj, it has not.
No, I think this has been happening. See, Nepal, this is interesting. Now, even when Nepal was not a secular state, a Hindu state till 2005-6, in the entire world, the maximum number of communists were in Nepal. Even today, if you combine all these Maoists and Malay and all of them together, they are the maximum numbers. And all these communists usually did not believe in God. But Nepali communists have been going to the temple. I will tell you some very important instance, and I'll name them also. I have no problem. See, in Tirupati session of the Congress, I had told the then Prime Minister, Narasimha Rao, that you should invite the Malay delegation. He said, will they come? I said, definitely. I am making it very brief, but this is very important. Then he asked me, no, they say that they are pro-China. I said, Mr. Prime Minister, you are very scholarly. Their name is not Chang Chung Shung. Their name is this, Sana Pradhan or Madhav Nepal, you know all this. So I don't think. So they were invited. There were 2 members in the delegation, led by Sahana Pradhan, then Ashok Rai. And I was asked to look after the Nepalese delegation, especially by the Prime Minister. Now, what was the first request they made to me? Sahana Pradhan and Ashok Rai. We want a darshan of the Balaji.
Lord Balaji.
That was the... So, these are the Nepali, even I think, to the best of my information, even Prachanda went to the temples when he came overground. So, the Nepali sense of secularism is going to be typically Nepali. It is not going to be the Indian brand of secularism.
Okay.
Mr. Nalapat. That I can show.
I simply want to point out that in Kerala, I've seen many comrades go to Sabrimala, not once but many times.
The comrades celebrated Janmashtami.
Exactly.
Anyway, Mr.
Look,
Mukherjee.
on this question of secularism, it's largely a matter of interpretation and governance. I mean, there's an aspect of faith, there's an aspect of law, and there's an aspect of politics.
Sorry to intervene, but would you agree with Mr. Tripathi that the secularism of Nepal is going to be a unique form in itself?
No, I don't think this, you cannot say there is Nepali secularism and Indian secularism and British secularism and so on. I mean, that would be an absurd debate. Most countries will interpret it or evolve in a different fashion towards the concept of secularism. To make it very clear, I agree with Madhav that, Western leaders also flaunt their Christianity. In fact, in Britain, the law still exists, which makes a departure from Christian ethics a blasphemy. Yes. It is fortunately never observed. The fact is, in observance, the Western concept of secularism, which frankly, without prejudice, I am very much in favor of, is a total divorce between church and state. The state and its governance allows no role for the church. In law, there is no role for the church. In our concept of secularism, which is, mind you, utterly different, it is a religion has a role in just about everything, including banning meat or whatever, but you treat hopefully you treat all religions equally. Nepal follows that kind of secularism. It is somewhat closer to the Western concept that Prashant pointed out, that it would be preferable if the president of Nepal, in his capacity as president, did not go around attending religious functions or publicly, visibly attending, going to religious places. To give you one example, which long ago happened in India, when the Somnath temple was revived and President Rajendra Prasad wanted to go there to inaugurate it as he was invited, Nehru had said, no, you shouldn't go, but he went. So Nepal's secularism is basically an inclusive secularism that says all religions will be treated equally. It is not a complete divorce, a complete separation of religion and state. Therefore, there will be leaders who will follow their own particular religions even when they are in government, and I think we should accept it like India has accepted it. Nepali Hinduism, in certain senses, has been progressive. You know, it allowed Dalit priests in temples long before India did. It's a commonplace in Nepal. Yesterday, as you know, just a day ago, they've banned, in another very progressive move, animal sacrifice in the biggest Hindu festival that takes place.
Yes.
So this is how it's evolving, and I think these are steps which are progressive and in the right direction.
Okay. Yubaraj, you know, you are sitting there. You tell us what is the concept of secularism, which you think the Nepali constitution will be evolving, and what the Nepali people will agree to.
No. The concept that that is being described as secularism in the Nepali constitution is what Prashant said. Definitely the Nepali state has shown a tilt towards Sanatan Hindu religion. There's basically like not being honest to the definition of secularism. That is one. Two, like Ambassador Mukherjee said about his advocacy for total separation of church and the state, in the context of UK and Western countries. Here, that's also, this assertion for Hindu Nepal is also largely a reaction to the visible presence of church and, their advocacy for right to conversion. The Western countries, especially UK,
I meant all religions.
Scandinavian countries are saying that right to conversion had to be integral part of secularism. Secularism without that right is meaningless.
Right.
So they have been openly saying, and now this conversion is also sending a kind of, kind of complex among the Nepalese fear complex that, okay, this is a majority Hindu state, maybe, conversion will reduce them to minority. There's a perception about this, persecution complex they are having. And so now you see these people on the street or people going on fast unto death so these are many church-related NGOs and IGOs are also getting diplomatic status in Nepal. So, all these things are, so what you do is partly, when you write constitution or when you formulate some policies, partly your own commitment and belief, and partly it's also reaction. So we see this kind of reaction coming up in Nepal, and the fact that authority of the state is totally invisible and depleted in many places. So people are reacting in a big way. You see RSS in this chapter called Hindu Sevak Sangh very active and opposed to it. You will see the kind of reaction 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. So it's not a closed issue. That's what I'm saying.
So what you said in the beginning, that it was just a formality as far as the Constituent Assembly is concerned, is actually not so. There is still a lot of debate going on around.
Yeah. Because the people were not involved. Yes. Technically speaking, yes, 601 MPs saying one thing or 550 MPs saying one thing would represent. But these are very crucial issues that in which the people would want their participation directly.
Okay.
So this didn't happen.
What Mr. Ghimire says, very important point what he's making is that it is not a closed chapter.
It's not a closed chapter.
This is what he's saying.
It's not a closed chapter. So that means that, Prashant, if it is not a closed chapter and the Constituent Assembly has taken its decision to ensure that the nation remains a secular nation, but at the same time there is still a lot of debate which needs to be made or conducted.
I think for now, the principle has got institutionalized in the Constitution.
Yes.
Right? But as Yubaraj said, that there are segments in society, there is a backlash among some against this principle, and who feel that this notion of secularism should either be dropped and Nepal should remain silent on the question of secularism or religion, or should revert to Hindu Rashtra. I don't think they have the political and the demographic, the democratically mobilized demographic strength right now to push this change through. Now, a lot of people who were in favor of this agenda were banking on the NDA government here pushing this line. Now, my understanding of what Delhi has done is that through the state apparatus, either through the Ministry of External Affairs or its intelligence apparatus, the government of India has not said a single word on secularism. That is the decision that has been left to the Nepali people. But the BJP and the RSS at the level of their organization, have communicated to Nepali leaders that, look, we think this is a bad idea and you should drop secularism. Clearly, that message without the state backing has not been effective enough for the Nepali leaders to backtrack completely. So I think it is not necessarily closed, because at the future political dynamics in Delhi and in Kathmandu, and of course the domestic resentment in Kathmandu against this issue could grow. But for now, I think it's a good thing that Nepal has institutionalized secularism.
Okay, Mr. Nalapat, would you agree with him that there is pressure from India, from the BJP, from the RSS?
Well, I'd like to agree with him totally in the sense that from the government, there's no pressure at all.
Government cannot...
There's no doubt about that. And as far as BJP and RSS are concerned, they are independent of the government in that sense. I mean, they can adopt any view that they like, and I'm sure they do.
And the BJP and RSS would like Nepal to remain a Hindu nation?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm certain there are elements in the BJP and in the RSS that would like the Indian constitution say that India is a Hindu nation. There's no doubt about that. But I simply want to point out that, for example, the Church of England, it's supposed to be under the sovereign of the entire government and the system, that is the Queen or the King, as the case may be, is also the head of the Church of England. But despite that, the British have a very secular system in which every community is free to practice religion. My point is, when the British came to India, they acted against one particular community. They took over all the major Hindu temples. They took away the temple properties, they took away the temple lands.
Anyway,
and the point, therefore, I'm trying to make is, then that was institutionalized post-1947 as secularism, whereas actually it is differential treatment of different communities.
Mr. Tripathi?
My point is...
Quickly, because,
very
the point made...
Very different. Though Mr. Ghimire and Prashant...
No, the pressure from India, pressure from BJP, pressure from RSS, you think it will work?
I don't think there is any pressure from government of India, because I have spoken to all concerned about this matter.
Okay.
But BJP and RSS definitely would like that, their propaganda. But what I'm saying is, though Mr. Ghimire and Prashant Jha know much more about Nepal than I do, but whatever little I know, that BJP and RSS notwithstanding, Nepal is not going to revert back to the Hindu nation.
Okay. Mr. Mukherjee, do you agree with that?
I would agree fully with that. I also agree with Yubaraj completely when he says that there is concern in Nepal about the activities of various NGOs, using, incentives, illegal incentives and so on and so forth for proselytization. And that's aimed particularly at Christian missionaries who are coming in with, lavish budgets and things like that. I don't think that's a danger, really, because the Christian population overall in Nepal, according to the 2011 constitution, is just about 1.25%. But, I don't think Nepal is, for the foreseeable future, going to revert back to being a Hindu Rashtra, regardless of the Hindu elements, like the RSS and VHP and so on. Secondly, those who are creating the backlash now, let me put the other side of the coin, are not going to go away. Religion in our part of the world is a very potent force, sometimes very divisive and very bad, sometimes very good, but it's a very potent force. It's not going to go away. But on balance, secularism will stay.
Okay. Yubaraj, would you agree with that? Very quickly.
Yes. Nepal, as a society, has a history of being very secular in its conduct.
Okay.
That's why secularism was never raised an issue by, very eminent socialist leaders like BP Koirala also.
Okay. Very quickly. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I just want to add, Yubaraj is absolutely an expert on Nepal. I just want to add that this has been seen in some quarters of Madhesi demand. And the Madhesis have not really tried to have an outreach to other groups, other parties. If they were to do so, and if this demand was seen as a pan-Nepal demand, rather than simply a Madhesi demand, that's when it's going to start to accelerate.
Okay.
There's correction there. Madhesis are not demanding a Hindu
Prashant, no, they're not. As far as we know, they're not.
Well,
but anyway,
section of them
I think this is a very interesting debate, and I'm sure we'll have to wait and watch. But most of my panelists feel that, this is an issue which needs more debate in Nepal itself, and maybe in India also. We'll wait and watch what will happen. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time.